Hey there! Today I'm going to talk to you about how I implement the writing process in my classroom with my students, and specifically how I use the Seesaw learning app for publishing our writing. So I just have a little picture here of the writing process to remind us that we get through pre-writing or brainstorming, then a draft, then revise and edit, and then finally publish. So when I first started teaching writing, I felt it was one of the hardest subjects to teach because it was very difficult to get students to actually do the writing and expand on what they're talking about. They could write a couple sentences and think they were finished, or just to get them excited to actually write about a topic. I also had a hard time showing the different steps. So we do a pre-write brainstorm where we try and do something like a concept map or some type of web or just a list of things they would write down, and then turn that into a draft. But from there, they wanted that to be it, and to copy it over again as a final copy was a major task to get them to do. So I really like using Seesaw to implement for the publishing part because it allows them to type, and it's just a different and more fun way to show that this is the final copy, this is what the published version looks like. So, this is our writing process. I think everyone has learned this. What I've liked to incorporate in the pre-write more, instead of just doing, okay, here's the topic, brainstorm everything you can think about for it, is to use an exemplar piece of writing. So if we're doing persuasive writing, then I'll use a persuasive essay that's at a good level for the age group of students I'm working with and show them that, and we go through that and break it down so that students have a better model of what their paper should look like in the end. And I'm going to show you a few pictures of this that I've actually implemented in my classroom. So here, I transformed my classroom into like a pizzeria to do persuasive writing just to make it more fun. But the first step, students received a piece of persuasive writing that was at the third grade level that we were working at. And we do color coding in our writing just to help break down the different parts. And so what I had students do was to color code the example so that they could see all the pieces of it, and then they referred back to that example all throughout their writing process to make sure that they were lining up their paper in a way that made sense and flowed and had everything that it needed. So they find the introduction and color code that green. The body paragraphs are color-coded yellow, and what they'll find in most essays is that there are usually 3 body paragraphs, and that was a huge help in getting them to lengthen and expand on their ideas in their own writing. And then the conclusion is in red. And for each type of writing, I keep that same consistency, that the green is introduction, the yellow is the body, and the red is conclusion. And then we'll use blue to point out different elements depending on the writing. So for this one, for persuasive writing, they were underlining wherever the writer had stated their opinion in blue, or that they were supporting their opinion. When we did informational, they underlined in blue anytime that the author cited text evidence. So this shows the importance of those specific elements to the writing that they're actually doing. So this is a student doing that writing, and then this is the completed. So I don't know if you can see the green is a little lighter here. They notice that at the end of the introduction, the author stated their opinion. And then there's some body paragraphs, and a couple more times they noticed the author was stating their opinion, and then at the end they had the conclusion. So students now had a basis to go off of when they begin their writing, that they needed, an introduction that was going to state their opinion. They needed 3 body paragraphs. An opinion was going to be stated throughout there as well, and then the conclusion paragraph at the end. And have an example as well, just to show you of the informational. So you can see the green here, yellow, and according to the text was the text citation or stating the title of the text, so they use blue for those. So this can work for any type of writing. I really like using the exemplar though for the kind of brainstorm part, instead of just saying, okay, start thinking what you want to write, to give them more of a purpose and a guideline and a model to know what they're supposed to do. So once they do that, then they can draft and giving a prompt. So for this specific one, for the persuasive one, I had several task cards that students picked through and practiced coming up with an opinion according to a question, and then I let them pick one of the task cards that they had done to write their opinion on. So giving choice is a huge motivator for students, especially in writing. They've got to be excited about what they're going to write in order to write well. So once you give students the purpose and the task, then they can do the writing. So once they finish their draft, I expect students to do the color code again on their draft. So this is one that of an informational text that was done on a student's draft, so you can see each part. But this also helps when they bring it to me, for me to quickly see, do they have everything that they need before we go on to the revise and editing part. But it also helps students as well as they're writing to reflect back on what they're doing and make sure that they're including everything that they need. So they color code a exemplar essay for the brainstorm. Then they do their own draft and color code it as well to make sure I have all the parts. Then I allow for revision to happen with partners. So when someone is ready to have theirs looked at, they'll switch papers, they fill out a little form for each other, or they look for punctuation, capitalization, spelling, things like that. And then they bring it to me so I can do a final edit just to make sure they didn't miss anything, or if they had any words they didn't know how to spell, that I can provide that direction at that time. So once students have finished the revising and editing, it's time to publish, and this is where I use Seesaw. So I'm going to show you actually my Seesaw account from this past year. So here we have a journal. All students have access to the journal, and I added students in by their names, and it gives them a little icon here. So these are all the students' names, and it shows how many items they have uploaded. There's a variety of things that you can do through Seesaw. So if you click this plus right here, these are the activities you can do. So you can upload photos. So every once in a while, we might have even taken a picture of our writing just to show that we're going through the writing process. And then students can actually add labels and captions to their picture. So it's really cool. They can interact with that and add a label to it. We do that with vocabulary all the time. They can make a video, sometimes for an end of the year project. I would have students create a video modeling or teaching how to do something. But I also use video to record students writing. This is the last step I consider in the publish to let me know that they are completely finished. So students can either videotape themselves reading it, or they can record just their sound, the audio reading it. And I'll tell you something else that you can do with that as well. You can insert a drawing. Another way to do vocabulary is creating a picture with that. File, note, and link. So note is what we used, and it just brings up like a notebook paper type thing, and students would type up their final copy. They click the check and they post it to their name. So let me show you some finished work. This is one of the persuasive writings that a student wrote. The topic she chose was, do you think everyone should have a bedtime? So she has all of her writing here, and then you can see right here that she has recorded herself reading it. So if I were to click play, you would hear herself reading through the writing, and then I would print out the QR code right here. And what that would do is, if the QR code was scanned, you'd be able to be linked to this writing and to hear it. So I would put writing on display in the hallway with not only the writing of it printed out. I can print what my student has written here out, but I can also print the QR code and attach that as well. And if someone walks by the hall and wants to do the QR code, then it's a neat way just to interact on that writing as well. And that was a fun way too to send it home to parents. The graded writing was that they could scan the QR code and hear their child actually read it. And I would like to do this next year with a QR code reading with children's books, and just to tape the QR code on the back of a picture book, and then hopefully we'll pair up with a younger grade and allow that grade to be able to listen to older students read the book to them. So this is part of our class journal. You can also create folders. I'm still working on learning how to do all of that, but I'd like to be able to do folders for each type of writing we do. But this is just some examples of the writing that we've done. So some we just took a picture of it instead of typing it up. As a teacher, you can also make activities. So I created a PDF and uploaded it here in the activity, and then students were able to have access to it to fill it out. And this was in response to science, but they had to fill out a section in each of these boxes, and that was posted to the journal. Everything that a student posts, you have settings, but it can be made to be approved by you, so nothing can get posted until you've approved it, and I feel like that's the best way to do it, at least in my experience with my students, just to make sure that things are appropriate. So you'll have notifications here that students want to add something, and then you can click approve or disapprove. The journal also acts as kind of like a social media page, so let me show you some of those. When we first began, I took the time to go through and put comments on everybody's writing, and I would like to continue doing that more. So here you can see that I left a comment just encouraging the student on something they did well and reminding them of things that they needed to pay attention to next time. And then students can also like and comment on those. And again, teachers have complete access over that. So you can also have multiple classes. Right here it says create a new class, which will be really great, especially for me next year. I'm going to be in a departmentalized subject, so I'll need several classes for each of those, but you can also just separate the subjects that way as well. So I hope this was helpful to you and that you give Seesaw a try. It is a learning app. I have access to it on my computer, so I can constantly go in and check students' writing there. I love not having to carry around all the papers for grading. I can go right into here to grade it and put it in the grade book, and students really love it as well. We use it on the iPads in the classroom, but you can also do it on the computer. So I hope you give it a try.